Hi everyone, meteorologist Ed Valley here. Special video for you today. We're talking a little bit about the 16 to 30 day pattern that goes now into really the back half of November. But this is mostly going to be a discussion about the winter forecast, and this is going to all of our clients. So there might be some stuff in here for some of you that you're not used to seeing, but this will be an all encompassing video basically about the weather from mid November all the way through February. So let's talk about it. La Nina. That's the big foundational piece of this entire thing. And we're starting the map here around day 7. This is the first week of November. So for a lot of you, most of you, central and eastern United States, it's been a very warm October. That is changing here into November. The first 5 days of November look like this. And it's impressive. I mean, this is legitimate cold. I mean, we're talking 5 to 15 degrees above or below normal. That's going to yield a lot of 30s and 40s across the north, 50s and 60s across the south, 70s for me in Florida. I just had to throw that in there. No, in all seriousness, it does look like it is going to be a chilly first week of the month. 5 to 10 day, still pretty chilly. But notice by the 10 to 15 day, that's the 8th through the 13th, we're starting to warm this thing up a little bit out west. So that's the key here, okay? We're going to see a significant amount of cold air for the first, 10 days, let's say, of November, but things are going to moderate a little bit as we head deeper into the month. And that leads me to our 16 to 30 day discussion real quick. Again, not focusing too much on this here today. This is mostly a December through February discussion. However, you notice here as we get into the middle of the month, there's going to be not a lot of blocking up in Alaska. That means there's going to be opportunities for ups and downs. And that's the hard part with this pattern. Because you notice there's a lot of ridging, quote unquote, in the north. With this type of pattern, I mean, we're going to see so much up and down, and I would imagine we're going to see intrusions here and there. You're seeing one here towards Thanksgiving time frame where the ridge kind of separates and you get an intrusion of cooler air in here. And you look at the 16 to 30 day, and it's really a lot warmer than I think we're actually going to be. Just overly warm, I think, across the central and northern U.S. and just North America in general. But it is worth noting that, again, as long as you have troughing near Alaska, it's tough to get sustained cold in here. And we kind of leaned on the MJO a little bit here in the 16 to 30. We're going phase 1, 2, 3 through the month of November. And you can see here that does yield cold through phase 2. But as you get into phase 3, you see that warm up that we just talked about there in the middle of the month. So there's going to be some ups and downs here. Okay. And here's what we're rolling with, noting that it's a very tricky forecast because honestly, there could be kind of a warm first week that trends cooler in the second week. So we're kind of trying to piece together two different regimes at the same time. Generally, drier than normal central and south, wetter than normal north and west, warmer than normal generally. But again, this might not be totally indicative of what's coming. There's going to be cooler periods within this 14-day window, okay? So that's the idea through the end of November. Now, I want to talk about this winter forecast because it's a really interesting one, and we put a lot of time into it. Shout to John Hominick, meteorologist who works with us here, business partner and co-owner here of Empire Weather. He helped a lot with this, so I'm really happy to have him contributing to this. And you notice we sent this on Wednesday. I'm just going through it. Generally speaking, winter forecast process pretty similar. We analyze what's going on now. That's why we went over what we just went over, right? And you can read through this. We look at global conditions, the stratosphere, the QBO, the quasi-biennial oscillation. That's another thing we'll talk about. ENSO, El Nino, La Nina. And then we put together an analog package, other years that have similar characteristics of what we think is going to happen. And then we weight them accordingly. So here's the highlights of the forecast. A strong start to December. We talked about how mid-month warm-up in November, we might trend cooler in the last week or so of November. That might be kind of the beginning of whatever we see here in December. January, our analogs are a little hit or miss with the data. And then in February, our strong southeast ridge is really commonplace in La Nina. So we're going to talk about that, but that's what we see on our research. And we'll start with ENSO. We're going into a weak La Nina. It's absolutely important to note. It's peaking here early in the winter. It's a weak La Nina. Notice I didn't say strong. Look at the difference. The October forecast from last year Notice it was a moderate La Nina, stronger La Nina. This year, it's weaker. What does that mean? Well, typically, the first thing is this is a double-barreled La Nina. We had one last year. We have one this year again. That's not exactly common, but it's not exactly rare either. We have some good analog matches that we're going to discuss. But one thing is important to note. 93% of double-barrel La Ninas end up being weaker in the second event. So we're pretty confident that the second La Nina here is going to be weaker, as the data suggests. And we're seeing some pretty good similarities between our current conditions and the sea surface temperatures and what our analog years showed. That's another confidence booster. Now, weak La Nina is just one part of the puzzle. We have something what we call the QBO, and you can read this. I'm not going to read it verbatim, but it's basically a way of diagnosing how much blocking we may see during a year. The more blocking you get, usually the colder you end up being for the winter. We're in an easterly QBO. That does favor a little bit more high latitude blocking, especially near Greenland. And we use that in our analogs. We came up with years that were double-barreled La Nina and a negative QBO. That's the goal, right? And what we yield here is, like I said, a little bit more of higher heights near Greenland, more blocking, a southeast ridge, and then a little bit cooler in the central U.S. Pretty standard in a La Nina. Now, what I think is interesting here is when you look at our analog package, this is the temperature anomaly for December through February. It's actually pretty chilly. However, one thing to note, read this paragraph. I'm going to highlight it. It's very important. Global warming, regardless of your belief on it, the data is trending warmer. And it's hard to use some analogs that we have in the 1960s without tweaking them a little bit warmer because of how warm the sea surface temperatures are around the eastern United States. Look at this, all above normal, okay? That means something. And as such, you may see this and say, holy crow, it's going to be a cold winter. Well, you got to adjust for that trend, and it is going to be a little bit warmer than shown here. So month by month, December, generally some intrusions of colder air possible. Now, here's our analog years. The two that I want you to pay attention to, 17, 18, and then 11, 12. And then 2000, 2001. Those 3 years had a negative QBO when they were the second of a double-barreled La Nina. That's as close to a match as you can get. So those 3 years, double weighted. The other years involved 67, 74, 08, and 2020 last year. So here's our December forecast, generally thinking the northern tier has some cooler risk. Again, more blocking in Greenland, the risk for colder temperatures in New England at times, and the northern tier, warmest to the south. January, like we mentioned, the analogs are kind of wonky. I love that word. They're just a little off, and they lean warm, which in a La Nina, typically January would have a ridge, or a ridge in the southeast and a trough in the northwest. This is almost the opposite. So that brings our confidence down on January a little bit. We're leaning more classic La Nina, okay? Warm to the east and south, cooler to the north. But again, it's possible we could have some positive NAO that's less blocking and perhaps some warmer intrusions at times, okay? February, this is the cool thing. Southeast ridge is actually pretty prominent, but also the cold on the western side of that ridge is just as prominent. So that lines up with La Nina very closely. As such, we took our analogs pretty close to heart here during the month of February. Okay, so when you look at the entire December, January, February as one unit, here's what they yield. It's generally colder the further north and west one travels, warmer further south relative to normal, right? Now, New England, notice it's near to slightly above. That doesn't mean there won't be intrusions, especially early in the season, right? So generally speaking, it's a pretty classic La Nina winter, warmest to the south and east, coldest in the northern plains and northern Rockies. And really, there's still a lot of uncertainty with exactly how each month plays out. So we're going to be updating this as we get closer. And as always, if you have questions, please don't feel uncomfortable reaching out. We're happy to help and answer your questions. And like I said, we'll be tweaking this as we go along. Have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you again soon.